Cathy, we talked about the importance of having everyone on the same page in terms of what are our needs and how you went about getting there, using focus groups and charts and data and everything. But the next step is really looking at, okay, now that I know there's an issue, what do we do about it? So what are some of the strategies that you use to help teachers focus on what those kids really needed?
Well, what I found in visiting classrooms was, even though at that time standards had become very important, we had California state standards once again, because we had those back when I started teaching in the early 70s. But what I found was teachers struggled with how to take that standard and actually chunk it out into small, teachable bites. How to take that bite and how to write a behavioral objective that they could teach to, and then they could assess. And having been in Upland Unified School District for 10 years, Upland was known at that time for their staff development.
I remember that.
And they were outstanding, and it was my benefit, even though when I came there I had been a classroom teacher 13 years in LA. I was first offended that I had to go to their week training, and then I realized how much I didn't know. So I used those resources and those tools. And we had the data. We knew what we needed to do. One was we had to teach English as a second language every day in the classroom. And we couldn't do 20 minutes. We had to do a minimum of 45. So that meant, how do we do that within the given number of minutes of a teaching day? At the same time, I brought in a trainer, and we worked on teaching mastery teaching. And I could not be the one going in the classroom to do that because I was the evaluator of the teachers. So I brought in a woman who I had worked under as a teacher, was a principal, outstanding, and had her do that work with the staff. And it turned the school around. Teachers learned how to not birdwalk, which was huge at that site, and really many sites. For them to even understand what that meant, and for kids to learn what that meant. So if teacher got off, it was like, are we talking about this? Oh yeah, we got to come back. To really focus on teaching the behavior and looking at multiple ways to teach that, or the objective, to teach the objective, and multiple ways to teach it. So that I also incorporated at the same time grade level planning. Because at every grade level, I had strong teachers and I had weaker teachers. How do we help the weaker teachers come up to be strong? And how do we support these strong teachers and make them feel that, not only are they working with kids and helping them, they're helping their teammates, which they actually liked. So I found that this process, and we did mastery teaching for 2 years with staff development. During that time, of course, budget cuts started happening. We've always had budget cuts in education. But I think as a principal, one of the most important things is you have to become very creative of how you're going to still do what has to happen and yet have fewer resources. So it was my job to come up with, okay, if I can't pay you to attend staff development training after school, then I will provide you with more classroom supplies because I had more money to buy supplies. So again, it's a matter of creativity to meet the needs, because without the proper training for the teachers, I knew the student scores were not going to go up because they didn't know how to provide strong instructional training for their kids.
Well, what you're speaking to, I think, is a really interesting point. I remember early in my career, I had a walkthrough of an assistant soup and a board member. And we had the best things going on in our room at that time. We didn't know they were coming. It was just a great lesson. And we had kids at math centers, and they were doing, the kids were totally engaged. The room was raucous, but good things happening. And as they walked out of the room, the assistant soup looked at me and she said, I have one question for you. Were they activitying or was teaching going on? And I was stunned. I didn't know what to say.
She couldn't identify it.
Well, I think it was an excellent question that she didn't know how excellent it was because it's never left me. And I think when you were talking about the teachers were not teaching to an objective or being focused on it and wandering off, I think that's one of the biggest problems we have with all the instructional materials that teachers have.
It's overwhelming.
They can be doing everything that you hand them, and all they're doing is activity.
Right.
Because they're not clear in their own mind what it is the kids have to learn today, nor is it clear in the student's mind what they have to learn.
Well, and one of the things that I started doing was I required my teachers to write the objectives on the board for the day. So that, and students had copies of the standards. Every student had them at their site, at their desk. So they knew exactly this is what they were learning. And, it would be TLW, the learner will. And then the objective was written. And it was something that I had done actually as a 6th grade teacher in Upline, so that I knew what I was doing and what I was focused on. And one of the things that I found as a classroom teacher, we had started to departmentalize the last 4 years I taught. So we all taught our reading and our writing, but I focused on science, which is my love, and social studies, and my team partner focused on mathematics. And so what it helped me to learn those standards so innately, but then each year to continue to build my repertoire of information and how to better provide students with great hands-on activities. And so I had such success at that as a classroom teacher. I wanted my teachers at the sites to have that same success. So using that real clear objective, I think, it makes it easier for teachers. But they don't always know that when they haven't had that experience.
Well, and I think with the shift to the Common Core standards, where there's levels of rigor that will be very evident in the assessments, I think it's going to be critical for teachers to be very clear what it is and at what level of expectation are they teaching that standard.
Right, absolutely. I think for teachers who, in the beginning when I started teaching, it was, even though we had standards, this is our curriculum. But it wasn't, as a staff, we never looked at it that way. It was, I started teaching in kindergarten, and so it was, I think for a lot of the content area, except reading, it was, how are we going to do the activities to make it fun and the kids can learn? And that was fun for me. Of course, that's great to do. My salvation as a brand new teacher, teaching reading to kindergartners, was I had a very regimented program. I used the old DISTAR program. But I was teaching English to second language learners, how to read in English. At the same time, as a bilingual teacher, I had to teach reading in Spanish to the English-speaking students. And the only program we had in Spanish was El Onomatopeco, which was the program they used in Mexico. And yet we didn't have any materials because bilingual education came in and you're going to do this, 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 but oh, by the way, I have no materials. So I actually made a booklet like my DISTAR booklet using the program of Elona Matapeco to teach reading. So it was really amazing. But it worked. The kids learned to read. So anyway.